Good day, Divorce Stoppers audience. I have a testimonial coming in today from James. He is in a marriage relationship where he and his wife actually had a pretty good marriage, but he got lured into infidelity with a lady that had kind of been luring him in for just a little bit, and eventually he gave in to the temptation with a lady that actually was in his church. And the as you're walking in that relationship, James, whenever you came into the Divorce Stoppers program, you had ended that affair, and you had ended that affair, if I remember correctly, about almost 2 years before you came into the program. But ultimately, your wife never knew about the affair while that was going on, and even when
Right.
the affair ended, you were dealing with such extreme guilt and shame because that was against everything that you believed in, and ultimately you did the right thing and you ended the affair, but the guilt and the shame that was eating you up was causing you to be feel like you didn't deserve to even have this wife anymore, like she was too good for you, you didn't deserve it, you couldn't apologize enough. That your conviction to end the affair has now turned in from conviction to guilt and shame and condemnation. And your feeling and your lack of self worth and your lack of worthiness was the key element that led you to actually become disgruntled, maybe not in the best of moods. You became like resistant because you didn't feel like you deserved to be in a good marriage. Therefore, your mindset focusing on I don't deserve this marriage caused you to ultimately act out on that to the point where your actions were in line with somebody that doesn't deserve to have a good marriage, which ultimately pushed your wife away. So she ended up leaving
Right.
you 5 months after the affair ended, not even knowing about the affair. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Can you talk?
So
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I was gonna, I was gonna kind of elaborate on what you said a little bit.
Okay.
And it's just funny. The funny thing about temptation is, as men, we think we're strong and disciplined and that we can resist it. But like most of us, we fall to temptation in most cases, which is exactly what happened to me, honestly.
Yeah, and the temptation is one thing, and even like falling into something that's like sexually immoral and all that stuff, as bad as that is, a lot of people think that that's like one of the number one causes of divorce. It's not. Typically, when an affair ends, if it's actually ended for the party that's been, I guess like you've got the person that's been the offending party, and then you've got the person that's been offended.
Yep.
Typically, the person that's been offended can forgive, and I like to say forget, but my definition of forget means that I'm not holding that against you in judgment anymore. So I might still
Right.
remember it, but I'm choosing to not remember it in judgment against you, meaning I'm willing to let our marriage go forward. Typically it's kind of normal that people can get past that if the opposing, like the offending person has agreed to stop the affair and they're not doing it anymore. But it is a very normal thing, though, even for the person that's into the affair, that they're struggling with unforgiveness of themselves, and they
Yeah.
tend to lash out in the marriage in a way that is not productive for the marriage. It's definitely counterproductive. But not only is it counterproductive in the marriage, it starts affecting every area of your life, which is one of the reasons you don't want to go into sexual immorality of any kind, but especially an affair. So,
Yep.
can you kind of talk a little bit about like why was it so difficult, do you think, to forgive yourself?
Well, I think first things first, one of the main reasons it was so difficult to forgive myself is simply because I know those 18 months I was operating outside of the character and who I know that I am called to be.
Right.
Um, and that guilt was just so heavy. It was the guilt. Like I mentioned, it was the operation outside of my expectation for myself, right? And it was, after it's all said and done, it's a healthy and humbling reminder that we are all human, and we all make mistakes. What I really appreciate about this program is that it's taught me that I'm not defined by my history or my past or the mistakes that I've made, but I'm who has called me to be. But going back to the guilt, it was physically heavy. It was physically heavy, mentally heavy, spiritually heavy, and it was something that was extremely difficult to carry on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned like where the different ways that it's heavy. You know, a lot of people, whenever somebody's looking for marriage help, specifically men that come into our program where the wife has said, "I don't want to be married anymore," or "I want to be separated." That's one of the first things that we implement through the 7 week through the modules that we go through in the Q&A. We're constantly immersing you in how do you attract her back? And
Yeah.
I know that was one of the things that really appealed to you was when we talk about, you remember the acronym?
Yep, I believe it's Spice,
Yeah,
right?
and that's
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that's for spiritual. You become more spiritually attractive, physically attractive, intellectually attractive, and your character attractive, and most importantly to women and to wives, the emotional attractiveness. And that was one
mhm,
of the things that you really didn't even see, how you didn't smell so spicy to your wife
right,
because of your guilt and your condemnation and your shame. um, you were very emotionally unattractive. And for her, that was more of a deal breaker than finding out about an affair that you had ended. Was this guy
right,
doesn't smell good to me anymore. He doesn't smell like
right,
spice. And so can you kind of talk about at what point walking through the program, part of the program with the way that we're different is I teach men how to easily, it's not hard work, it's just
mhm,
not common sense, but the
right,
program teaches men to think differently, to be renewed by their mind. If you think about
mhm,
like when you first met your wife, you weren't working on your relationship to fall in love, but yet, when you start having relationship problems, everybody wants to start working on it, and working on it's
yeah,
always the one thing that's not working.
yeah, yeah. That's a
And it's
fact. That's a
because it's
fact.
because of this guilt and shame. Like if we're doing something wrong, or I was rude to her, or I hurt her feelings, now I feel like I have to be punished by working on it because I should pay the price. And when I
Right,
choose as a spouse to start paying the price, ultimately the one that ends up actually paying the price, when I decide I should pay the price, is my spouse. But
yep,
my program, through the Divorce Stoppers program, we actually teach you you're paying the wrong price and you're paying the wrong way. What we want you to
yeah,
do, we're not trying to get you to climb up this grueling mountain where it's hard and step by step. You're already at the top of the mountain. It's just she's looking up there saying, I don't want to be with that fool.
right,
And
right,
so,
right,
what we're teaching you to do is take the easy stroll down the mountain because she's down here by the river. Nobody wants to
mhm,
be on the mountain with you because you're feeling guilty, you're feeling sorry for yourself, like you don't deserve anything. Well, why would she want to be with you if she's looking up there? Oh my gosh, look at that guy up there. He's on top of the mountain and he's unhappy. And he wants me to walk
yeah,
up there? No.
yeah,
So what she really wants is she wants to know that you're not just up there screaming selfishly, I want you back. Let me try to lasso you up and pull you up this hill. She
yeah,
wants you to take the easy steps emotionally down to
yep,
the river where she's at.
yep,
Because she wants you to be
yep,
the safe person to talk to. And she doesn't care if you don't forgive yourself because she wants you to forgive yourself. Why? Because by not forgiving yourself, what's that doing to her?
right,
I hear this a
right,
lot, and I love on social media, obviously in the business that I'm in. So, social media feeds you stuff that's in your field. And I see these posts all the time. If you love her, let her go. Well,
yeah,
so what happens if you let her go? Now she's a divorcee, and now she's forced to either be single and alone or enter
Hmm.
into a new relationship, which now that you've messed this one up for her, right? And you haven't just because you love her so much, you decide to let her go. Now, statistically, her next relationship has just increased like 700% that it's going to be a failure because the
Right.
next relationship has a lower statistical success rate of surviving. So I
Right.
think that if you love her, you should become the best version of yourself, attract her back, and give her the life that she deserves with the man that she wants to be with. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. I think it's actually funny because when I met my wife, I wasn't looking to date. I wasn't looking to marry. I honestly I was in a season where I was doing my best to just focus on myself. I was literally just trying to doing my best to pray, work out, go to work, pray, work out, go to work, read my word. And I was bettering myself, and I think um, what my wife was so attracted to me about is she saw that, right? She saw my purpose, she saw my vision, she saw me working towards my purpose, and that's how we came together, right? And that's how it was for a while. And when you begin to lose sight of that, or really you get comfortable, if I'm being honest, you get comfortable, and that drive and that vision starts to dwindle a bit. And that's really how I ended up slipping into some infidelity, simply because I stopped focusing on being the best man and guy that I could be, and started focusing on other things or just getting complacent.
Yeah.
And once I went through the program, and you were teaching us kind of about, just I think it was, if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, taking back my power, taking back the authority that I have over my life, and just continuing to grow closer to God and pursuing my purpose, my God given purpose, is when our marriage began to mend together again.
I love that you just actually said, I'm going to reword what you said. When I stopped working on the relationship started working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So at what point in the program, so as you're going through the 7 week modules and we're talking about
Mhm,
spice and how to increase in your attractiveness and helping you understand that holding on to guilt is just selfish and that that's the worst thing that you can do for her, like you're doing an injustice to your spouse. At
mhm.
what point in the program did you start believing that? And then as you started believing it, what were the changes that she noticed in you first and that you kind of noticed in yourself when you started seeing wins with her?
So I would say probably, and I kind of got to estimate here. I'd probably say around week 4, when we got really involved with some of the Q&A sessions with some of the other guys. And I realized people were going through the same things I was going through, right? Like, guys had these questions, or I even had questions throughout the 7 week module. And I kind of got to see their strategies and their perspectives on things. And then, I kind of just kind of let go and said, you know what, let me just like put this into action, right? I've been studying this textbook stuff. My course director, he's great, but let me actually do instead of just think, right? And honestly, it just straight up started producing results. Maybe took probably a week of some consistency, and me, really beginning just to work on myself. And you can just see the dynamic and the shift of the relationship change, and begin to go towards a uh, a more positive route.
Yeah, I love that. Would you say as you transition through this, I'll use the acronym SPICE for the levels of attractiveness, but would you say you smell a lot better today in the form of spice than you did when you started the program?
Oh, 100%. My stench, I couldn't even stand my own stench in the beginning of the program, right? And now I can tell that my wife loves my new aroma, right? And it's a refreshing aroma, because it's not now it wasn't the same aroma that we came into the marriage with, right? Now it's a new fulfilled aroma. We have some marriage obstacles that we've overcome, and now it's fresher and sweeter to her, right? So she's even more attracted to me now than she's ever been.
So would you say that your marriage? So let's just kind of reverse back. So you came into the program in September, and
Correct.
you guys had been separated for what, 5 months, and you had already
Yep.
ended the affair a year before that. Um, would you say if you fast forward back in your marriage before the affair,
Hmm.
when things were still good, would you say
Hmm.
that they're better today than they were back then when you would consider it good?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So for me, what I thought was good wasn't as good as it is now. After we've gone through the course, and I got kind of I don't even want to call it a second wind, but I'll use it for now just for all intents and purposes.
Yeah,
Once I got this second wind, we have some, like I said, we have some history behind us now, which strengthens and grows a marriage anyway.
right.
I would absolutely say that after this program and the skills that I've learned and now implemented into the marriage, our relationship is just as refreshing, more refreshing, more intimate now. We're having sex more now. We're going on date nights more consistently. We're pouring into each other. I can see my fruits, you know, her pouring back into me, as I continue to work on myself. Right. So it's just an evolving cycle of blessings that are being poured within the marriage.
Yeah, something else something that really stood out in my mind with you was when you came into the program, you were just shrouded in guilt, number one.
Hmm.
And, in disbelief that she would even be attracted back to you. But a lot of that still, I think, stemmed back to guilt. But I remember as you joined the program, you were already a very spiritual person, but it was
Hmm.
very interesting and even encouraging to me, and I know to a lot of the other men in the program also, to see that, hey, here's this extremely spiritual man that
Yeah.
understands a lot about like the written word and prayer and all the things that come with that. And as spiritual as you were, as you go through the program gives you practical steps on how to actually increase in your spiritual attractiveness. So it
Yep.
was very interesting to me to see somebody that was already very spiritual become
Hmm.
more attractive spiritually, which
Hmm.
ultimately is what led to your wife connecting with you again emotionally. Can you kind of explain a
Yep.
little bit about that transition for you?
Sure. So I mean, obviously this course takes you through a spiritual journey, right when you start to understand things about yourself more that you didn't really know, and really you start to understand how God works a little bit more, and
Yeah, and just for anybody
you know,
listening, this is not a biblical based study. I'm a Christian, I don't hide that, but no, if you're a Jew or a Muslim or whatever, we teach you how to
right.
restore your relationship, and that's what this is about. And everybody takes different things out of it, but
Yep.
it's not like we don't teach this through a church or anything like that, but we do teach spiritual attractiveness and how to increase in that, and along with all the other ways that you can increase in your attractiveness. But go ahead and finish your story on how you related to it because we all grow differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was kind of just my piece of how I guess converted it into what me and my family kind of what we believe in, right?
Right.
So just going through the course and being taught and groomed how to pursue me just being a better man, whether it be integrity, whether it be discipline, love, like you mentioned plenty of times, that SPICE acronym came in handy plenty of times.
Yeah.
There began to be a better and different connection that my wife and I came about to, and it wasn't just physical, right? It wasn't emotional or mental, right? It came to that, but we began to develop a spiritual attractiveness to each other, where we were simply one as a marriage should be, and those types of attractions just continued to grow and grow and grow. Like I said, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, honestly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And uh, I love that you explained it that way. one of the reasons that I pointed out that like this is not a church program that we're teaching is because there's a lot of that out there, and I actually went through some of that, and that's I think that's an amazing thing that the church is trying to reach out and help people in the community, and there's different even marriage programs or organizations that are biblical based. And I know, like in my first marriage, I was married a first time. I'm currently in my second marriage. I have this amazing marriage. I'm with my soulmate. But in my first marriage, when that marriage was coming to an end, and I was trying my
Hmm.
part to save it, I didn't want it to end. 70% of marriages are filed by women, so usually
Yeah.
it's the women filing, the men don't want it. And so I was in that shoes, and I even reached out to some religious programs, and then I was given some Bible verses and all. And I'm faith based, so I understand that. Uh, but what I didn't get from those kind of help was they would be like, okay, well here's some scripture, but nobody taught how do I do this in the real world? Like how do I actually
Applicable. Right.
attract my spouse back? How do I so part of what I do, like in the Divorce Stoppers program, is no matter what faith you are, when we teach you to be renewed in your mind of how you think, and we teach
Right.
you and walk you through a new way of being, and then help you implement practical steps daily that through immersion in these steps, you actually change how you think and become a different person emotionally, which for a lot of
Yep.
people becomes a spiritual experience. And for some people it doesn't. It's emotional. But
Yep.
I find it very interesting though that we can kind of take a lot of the principles that the faith-based programs like, okay, well, here's step, here's this scripture, this scripture, this scripture in the word, but nobody's teaching you how do I implement that word. Hey guys, I want to share something with you. If you're still watching the video at this stage, I'm assuming that you're getting at least some benefit from the content. I want to give you something else. I'm offering right now a free masterclass, and at the end of that masterclass, I'm giving you an opportunity to apply to work with me. The website to do that is denvergriffin.com/masterclass. And if you're enjoying some of this content, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'm posting YouTube videos daily right now to give you free content in order to help you save your marriage. And I want you to be notified as those videos become available in real time. And so
Right.
that's one of the things that we do over here is say, okay, so we don't have to work at the relationship, but what do we do? Because if this was easy, I wouldn't need to be doing this as my job. And so,
Right.
and I'm going to reword that now. This is easy. We're not
Yeah.
teaching people to walk up, hike up a mountain. We're teaching men to walk down the mountain where their wife is. And it's the easiest journey you will ever take. But it is the opposite of what you're thinking you should do, because your brain is like
Right.
at all costs wanting to work on it, and working on it's what's
Hmm.
not doing it. The reason you couldn't forgive yourself coming into the program is because you were
Hmm.
wanting to work on it, and you didn't understand how do I forgive myself. It's a very
Right.
easy thing to do, but the action steps that are required to forgive yourself, oftentimes you have to actually do the exact opposite of what you're feeling. And even though you're guilty, you feel like you deserve to take the hard road,
Yeah.
but you have to be convinced and given some action steps that the pathway to forgiveness, to forgiving yourself, which puts her in a position to now forgive you, is you have to take the easy road. That's when we start teaching it, that's what you say. I have to take the
Yep.
easy road. And then you start transitioning into I get to take the easy road. And the things that you think
Yep.
you have to do, you transition into thinking the way of thinking was I get to do this. And you're
Yep.
sitting over here saying, well, my marriage can't be restored because I can't forgive myself. That's a story that you're holding on to. And so we
Right.
transition from, okay, maybe that's an issue, but that's what's not working. What will work for you is what can you do?
Hmm.
What can I
Hmm.
do to move forward? And we want to do the opposite if you love her, let her go. We want to love her by attracting her back and treating her the way that she deserves to be treated. And then you guys leave
Right.
a legacy of success to your community, because it's very encouraging to see that, wow, they fought through it. Even though when a woman walks out the door, first thing that she typically does is recruit people that love her and maybe
Yeah.
share some of the less uh, admirable moments that you guys had in the marriage about you. Now they love her, and now you have multiple enemies against the marriage. And even when she starts
Right.
feeling like she wants to come back, now she has people that she shared intimate details about the marriage, where maybe you were like mean one time, you had a big fight, you pushed her, you called her a bad name, and they're like, oh, you don't want to go back to him. Once a dog, always a dog. Once a cheater, always a cheater. And that's not true. Some of the
Right.
best marriages that exist on the face of the planet are marriages that survived an affair. And I'm not encouraging anybody to go have an affair, but some of the best marriages that I have ever seen ever are marriages where there was an affair and the man chose to forgive himself, which helped the woman to forgive him, because now he's focused on, what am I supposed to be doing with my life, and how do I
Hmm.
be the 1% of the 1%. I love what you said earlier. If it is to
Hmm.
be, it's up to me. Do you want
Yep.
to deal your wife a legacy of divorce, which statistically is going to cause her to get another divorce? Or do you want to
Yep.
be the 1% of the 1% of man and say that not only do I need to do this for me, I really need to do this for her? Because by
Yep.
me saying, if it is to be, it's up to me, to be honest, unless she starts saying, if it is to be, it's up to me, she needs you to be the one that forces it to be, by stop
As the man.
forcing it. The way that you
Yep.
do it is by stop forcing it. You do the opposite of how you're feeling. And that's how you practically implement and grow, even spiritually, but especially emotionally. Anything else you want to share about
Yeah.
that?
No, not really. I just really, I mean, I really appreciated what you said in terms of, being transformed by, our mind, and really a shift in mindset when it comes to restoration, and achieving what we're all here to accomplish. So that was probably one of the biggest things that was pivotal for me, was not just getting wrapped up in how I think, but understanding that this, if this wants to get done, it takes a transformation of your mind.
Yeah, I can relate to, I think the reason that I'm uniquely qualified to do this compared to anybody else that's out there, and I know because I
Hmm.
looked, because I needed help once, is
Hmm.
that the things that you have been through, I actually, in my first marriage, I actually experienced it. I stepped out,
Hmm.
and the guilt, and I stopped. I did the same exact thing. I stopped. I was addicted to pornography. I had stepped out on the marriage, and the overwhelming guilt and shame ate me. And I stopped it for, gosh, about 5 years.
Hmm.
And it just ate me up. And ultimately, my guilt and shame and condemnation actually just made me, because I didn't feel like I deserved forgiveness, and and I was very spiritual, and I was also very biblical. Like, I went to church and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and I knew that that's the reason I had stopped doing all those things. I had stopped looking at pornography, all this stuff. I chose to do that on my own, and I even knew like scriptures around that, and I went to church and I sought counseling from my pastor, and all I got was like Bible scriptures, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I have all this, but how do I make that work in my life? And then so I just, and after I kind of went through some things in my marriage, and then I started, like, fast forward like a few years, and I enter a new marriage, and things are peachy. I didn't think we'd have any problems. Nobody cheated. There was no pornography. There was no addictions or drugs or any of that. But what happened was stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and that built up some resentment. And then so I'm finding myself in like a situation where there's some issues, and I'm like, I don't know how to navigate those. And so I actually started trying things and journaled them as I did it, and found these wins
Hmm.
and found these wins and found, how do I start thinking differently? How do I stop working on the marriage and then start seeing massive results really, really fast? And how do I stop thinking that I need to do all this hard work when I met her, we didn't do a lot of hard work. I didn't attract her
Right.
through hard work on the relationship. And so when I let go of those inner beliefs and actually started changing how I thought about everything, and it was easy for me to do because
Yeah.
here I am, I got a second chance on life. I almost died. And now I
Yeah.
have a second chance on my life. And it's easy for me. It was easier at that point for me to like hold on to all these beliefs, these inner vows where I thought I had to take the hard way, the hard road, which is like the road everybody travels, right? If you go see a marriage
Yeah.
counselor or even if you go to a church a lot of times and talk to a preacher, they're going to give you the hard road and it's out of ignorance. It's out of
Yeah.
ignorance. And
Yeah.
and it's just because our DNA thinks that if we want to accomplish something, we got to work hard for it. Well, if you want to be physically attractive,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know. A few months ago, that bicep was a U, and I'm starting to gain my
Yeah.
weight back. And it's hard work in the gym to get that bicep to start bulging again. But that's not the same way in a relationship.
Yeah.
A relationship grows with fun. Not
Yeah.
talking about the serious stuff, not talking about the relationship, not working on the relationship. And even if we like are a spiritual person and we want to tie scriptures to it or whatever, I was actually talking to another gentleman who was giving me a testimonial, and he kind of brought up something which was actually the foundation for I was actually praying about my marriage with my wife and asking, like, God, how do I do this? I had been a marriage coach for couples with 100% success, but I was having some issues and didn't know how to do this myself. And then that's when I actually read some scripture around that, like around the Jericho walls, like march around and you don't have to do any work and they'll crumble. And that's what I was in, a
Yeah.
separation, just like you. And I was like, I
Yeah.
couldn't get her to talk to me. And when I started realizing that I don't have to work in order to make the walls crumble, I have to back up, stop working, and then the bricks will just start falling. And that's what worked. And
Right.
as I started seeing that work and the bricks falling, that's when I started saying, this guilt I have for being a jerk and some of the stuff I said to her when I was on medication for cancer treatment that was making me have anger issues. I remembered some of the stuff I said and it was like bad. It was like really hateful. Then I actually could get in a position as I saw the bricks start falling. I'm over here on the other side working on myself and I'm like, that's how I let go of the guilt for what I did, because
Right.
now that the bricks are coming down, I can understand how I made her feel. Instead of going saying, I'm sorry that I was mean to you, I'm now going to her saying, I've really thought about some of the stuff that we've been through. And I want you to know I feel horrible. And I hope you can find in your heart to forgive me for the way I made you feel.
Right.
And that becomes genuine. That's like a spiritually, emotionally charged, real apology. And when I learned how
Yeah.
to apologize that way, the bricks that had stacked up in me, holding on to guilt and shame,
Yeah.
it just fell off. And that's actually
Yeah.
biblical, but nobody ever taught me how to practically implement that in the real life.
Right.
And I figured
Right.
out how to do it.
Same for me.
And now I teach other men to do it, and that's why I say 100%. There's other programs out there that tout we got 70% success, and I'm like, well, isn't the divorce rate 50%, and in second marriages it's 70%? Like, are y'all taking
Yeah.
on second marriages? And I'm like, are you seriously bragging about that 70%?
Yeah.
I'm not buying that. For me, we're taking every man in the program where they're supposed to be, and it's 100%, 100% of the time. And that's just what I'm gonna tout
Hmm.
until the day I hit the casket. But anyway, well,
Yeah.
listen, James, anything else that you want to add to it? Thank you very much for coming on today. Like anything that you want to, anybody that's watching this, if there's a man out there and maybe they're feeling guilty and maybe they're thinking there's just no hope, she's telling them it's over and she's not having it, what would you tell them if they're on the fence about the program? Like, what would be your advice?
My advice would be, if you love your wife, if you value your marriage, take the program. There's no better statistics than 100% success rate. You know, why not consider yourself part of those statistics? Again, if you love your wife, if you value your marriage, if you value your family, the program works. And I just want to thank you, you know, for your leadership and your guidance throughout the program, as my marriage has now been restored.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that, and I'm glad to know that you're building a legacy of a successful marriage in the community, and also that your family and friends and coworkers and everybody else are getting to see that. So I'm
Yep,
honored to work with you, and I look forward to seeing you in our Facebook groups real soon.
sounds good. Thank you so
All
much.
right, have a good night, man.
You as well.